Chicago Bears in week 1, lost to a score of 19-10. You know we got all the information coming right at you right after this. It's 49ers Red Zone time, baby.
Let's go get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, double down 3, 1, 2, 3, double down.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of 49ers Red Zone. I'm your host, Rohan Chakravarthi. To my right, that's Marco Martinez over there, my lovely co-host. How you doing, man?
How's it going, man? I haven't talked to you in a good while because you're living the best life in college. How you doing, my man?
Hey, college has been fun, settling in, and now, back into the live stream. So that's the part that I like to do. Obviously, the 49ers played some football this weekend. I'm just glad football's back. Very, very interesting week 1, to say the least.
So the first question I have for you, though, Rohan, though, is okay. Yeah, we're late. My bad. That's my fault. I take the blame for this one. I was on my way home from a doctor's appointment, so that's why we are late. But Rohan, any college parties yet?
I will not confirm nor deny. No, I'm joking. It's been fun. Yeah, no, there's a lot of them. Yeah, we just chat.
Those are fun, man. Especially because you're at a big school and you guys had an upset. I saw your school got upset. So
that was a sad upset
that was a fun game to probably cover, though.
Yeah, it was a fun game to cover. I did have a lot of fans that were kind of disappointed, probably in my analysis because it was probably a little negative. But yeah.
So going straight into the game, obviously, Rohan, are you able to actually evaluate this kind of game with the amount of rain and everything that was going on? Because from what I had heard, it was so much rain that the streets were flooded. Like, literally streets of Chicago were flooded because of the drainage and everything. It was not properly draining. So does that factor in how you actually evaluated this game?
I think so. I think yes and no. In that, I think there is enough where you can take away from this game. And also, obviously, football is a game where you play with the conditions. But also, you heard in the fourth quarter how the players said it's hard to throw the ball, hard to catch the ball. That's what Devo Samuel said in the post-game press conference. And you saw how poor the weather conditions were. When one guy was sliding, everybody was just sliding, and it was literally slush on the field. So, yeah, I do think that you have to factor in the weather conditions, which is why, in my opinion, it's fairly hard to evaluate players like Trey Lance's performance, players like Justin Fields' performance as an overall performance. Now, obviously, it wasn't raining maybe to that magnitude during the entirety of the game, but this is different conditions than you'll face in a regular game. So I do think that is something important.
So I agree. So obviously the rain does factor into a lot of the game plan in a sense, because your goal now is to actually dominate the trenches, right? And I think the 49ers did so very well throughout the game, right? The run game on offense was phenomenal until Elijah Mitchell went out, and then Jeff Wilson kind of stunk it up. But then if you look at what the 49ers defense did against their run, I thought it was actually pretty damn well until Justin Fields started scrambling in these kind of conditions. But going straight to the defense, I'd rather attack the defense because I couldn't really evaluate this game in terms of what the defense looks like, what the offense looks like, because there's just so much rain, there's so much slippery and sliding around that you can't really evaluate a game the proper way because of the elements of the game. And I don't care what anyone says, the elements of the game played a factor in the 49ers offense and the defensive side of the ball. And even if we go into the past couple games the Niners have played, Jimmy Garoppolo was affected again that Colts game by the rain. And I made sure when we criticized that game, I also talked about I would not give Jimmy Garoppolo harsh criticism because of that game. Same thing with the Washington Commanders game when they played Washington. I did the same thing. So I'm going to do the same thing with the 49ers this week. I'm not going to overreact. I'm going to take a back step, and I'm going to allow everything to keep flowing, but we still got to talk, right? Because the defense, there's some issues with that defense that we need to talk about. So I want to talk about the defense. What did you see from the defense that has you excited? And then we'll get to the disappointments later.
Okay, so starting with the excited, Talanoa Hufanga in that first half. In the first half specifically, Talanoa Hufanga was all over the field. He was fitting in well in run assignments. He obviously got the interception. He was doing everything that you expected him to do. And even more, with Jimmy Ward gone, his responsibilities increased and he stepped up to the challenge in really what was his first true start in his second season, right? And so to me, that was a positive for the 49ers at a position where they were really, in a way, questionable going into this week without Jimmy Ward. I think that Talanoa Hufanga was a obviously not a pleasant surprise necessarily because it was somewhat leading to how he was going to play in training camp, but definitely a good addition in a way to the starting lineup of this defense, and definitely easing the blow of losing a guy like Chakravarthi Tart, who I know you advocated for not being back with the team, but. I want to actually hear your thoughts on that, and then we'll move forward.
I thought Talanoa Hufanga played pretty damn good in the first half, especially in the run game, where a lot of people said he wasn't going to be able to run fit like Jaquaski Tart. Yet he was doing exactly that, right? Now in the pass game is where I think he struggled a bit. He did give up a touchdown that I can recall, which was to Dante Pettis. He blows his assignment and starts to pursue. But that's a
You could
young
even
that's a young
have
player
blame him for
mistake.
the second touchdown too, because he was the single high on that play. If he rotates earlier, it might not be a touchdown. But again,
See, that's where the second touchdown, I put that blame actually on D'Amico Ryans, right?
Really?
Because
Okay. Oh,
you
because of the
know,
luck.
yeah, the look. You should never have Talanoa Hufanga as your deep safety in
Yeah.
any scenario, and that's one thing that I've always said about Talanoa Hufanga is he's a great safety when he is robbing. He is a great safety along the box. You can match him up on tight ends. But now when you're putting him at single high, you're asking him to fail. You're putting him in a situation where he is not going to succeed. And now that is on the defensive coordinator. So that to me, on D'Amico Ryans by far on the second touchdown. The first one is on him, but it is good to see him. But who was the best player on defense in your opinion?
Best player on defense. Probably, if we're being honest, probably Fred Warner. I think Fred
Okay.
Warner is in the mix there because I mean obviously it's the little things, but I thought he rotated well and he also fit well in the run game. The Bears' run game initially was struggling. David Montgomery ran like 14 times for 26 yards. It was only when Justin Fields was there. When he was making plays with his legs, that really things started to open up because not only because of the field conditions, but also because the 49ers, those defensive ends seemed to over pursue towards the pocket, allowing Justin Fields to create space because he would be able to make a defender miss and things like that. Who do you think had the best game defensively?
So I would agree with you. Is either Fred Warner or I would go Charvarius Ward. I thought Charvarius Ward had a hell of a game in terms of when he was targeted. He usually was making the plays.
Yeah.
Now we have to talk about it, right? Because everyone, I don't know about you, but I haven't been the biggest Dre Greenlaw supporter like some of these fans, right? I've always said Dre Greenlaw is a guy who gets propped up based off of one play at the goal line in Seattle, right? Everyone talks about Dre Greenlaw as being this stud. I thought what we saw Sunday is what Dre Greenlaw usually is. A guy who is not in position, is going to miss tackles. I thought he missed a key tackle in terms of getting off the field on a screen pass. And then he has two arrogant, and I mean, there's no other way to put it. 15-yard penalties, unnecessary roughnesses that are called on him. He was absolutely the worst defender on the field, and I really would have had to sit him if I was a coach. Absolutely, I would have sat him if I was a coach because of how he was out of the element. His mind was no longer there. Who do you think the worst defender on the field was?
I think that you can make the argument that it was Dre Greenlaw. Another guy, I'm not going to put him in there because his expectations weren't as high. I didn't think Deshaun Gibson had the best game possible. He was in a way responsible for one of those touchdowns as well, had a dropped interception as well. I mean, I didn't think it was a bad game from Gibson overall, but Dre Greenlaw, I think, is the clear cut favorite. Like, he not only did he miss a couple of times, like you said, in the run game, he was obviously with the 2 penalties, and really that's where the momentum swang, right? The 49ers were shutting out the Bears the Bears offense. Justin Fields and them could not score at all. It's the 49ers kicking themselves in the foot. 15-yard penalty. And then on the next drive, it was a Charvarius Ward 10-yard penalty on 3rd down. And then on the next drive, it was another 15-yard penalty by Azeez Al-Shire. I think it was a face mask or one of those penalties that for 15 yards. Those 3 penalties were the catalyst for the Chicago Bears scoring on all 3 of those drives.
So the first penalty absolutely was on Dre Greenlaw. When even if the quarterback is sliding late, a quarterback is
the
gonna
late hit.
yeah. Even if a quarterback is sliding late, I get it. He barely touched, and I will give Greenlaw the credit. He barely touched Justin Fields, but when you are putting yourself in a situation for a ref to call a flag, that's when you're in the wrong situation, and that's why it is his fault. Don't allow refs to dictate the game and pull up. At the end of the day, if the refs are dictating the game, guess what? I'm going to say the refs are going to make the wrong call 75% of the time because they are humans, right? So, and it's a bang-bang play, and you got to protect the quarterback. So I think Dre Greenlaw was actually in the wrong for that. Going to the offense, right? Everyone wants to talk about, obviously, Trey Lance, Devo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. Like, what was there from your perspective? Because it's so hard to actually evaluate a game with all this rain and all this slipping and sliding. What do you think happened with Devo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and Trey Lance?
All right, so let's start with Trey Lance, obviously the big hitter. Trey Lance, you look at the box score, 13 of 28, 164 yards. You're like, wow, that's pathetic, right? But that's not at all entirely the case. First of all, the weather conditions were present. Did Trey Lance have inaccuracies? Yes. He missed a couple of throws that he should have hit. There were, off the top of my head, I know that there was a couple of 3rd down throws that he could have hit. There was one to Jennings that I saw, and there was, I believe, another one to Devo, but there were also drops by the receivers. I think Devo had one or two drops. Yeah. There was another drop as well, I believe, in the mix. But you saw the potential. There was that layered throw to Ray McLeod. There was the deep throw to Jawan Jennings. In general, Trey Lance was hitting the throws that he was supposed to. Like, he was hitting hard throws, which at least got you excited a bit. He was also utilizing his legs a lot. And so, it's like, to me, I don't know. I want to ask you before we continue. I know you talked about those 3 names. Offensive line. There are conflicting kind of reports from the media. Some saying that they actually played better than you thought. Some saying that they did not play well. Where do you stand on that?
I think the 49ers interior offensive line played fairly well. For what they're a young group in the interior offensive line. I thought they played fairly well. Now, where the offensive line struggled is where I didn't think they were going to struggle. Yeah. I didn't think they were going to struggle at left tackle. They struggled there. And then right tackle, I was expecting Mike McGlinchey to struggle his first game back from an injury. He looked like the same Mike McGlinchey he has over the past couple of years, a guy who's going to be solid in the run game. You're going to see people on Twitter posting his pancakes in the run game, but they won't post anything of him in the pass protection, or when they do, it's him winning these reps, right? But realistically, Mike McGlinchey is not that good in pass protection. And I don't care what anyone says. You could argue with me all you want. I do not believe that Mike McGlinchey is that solid in pass pro. Now, the offensive line, if I had to grade them, because this is a solid question, I would give the offensive line a C+, because in the run game they were fairly well. Interior offensive line was pretty solid, and I felt they had good enough pockets for Trey Lance to navigate and step up into the pocket. So I felt they were good enough for Trey Lance to navigate, but at times he's getting too much pressure on that outside of the edge, So that's kind of what makes his clock speed up. And as a young quarterback, it speeds up your clock. Now you're stepping up into a pocket where you shouldn't be stepping up. You should be getting out, Because there was once where he stepped up into the pocket,
Right.
thinking he felt pressure from the right side, stepped right into Trent Williams' guy who Trent Williams had locked up in Stonewall. So that's
Yeah.
just young quarterback mistakes that I think more so Trey Lance is trying to do good because he felt pressure on the right side, ends up becoming a sack. But I think the line played fairly well in terms of what kind of conditions it was. In any condition like that in pass protection, the advantage goes to the defense because they're going forward versus the offensive lineman has to work lateral to backwards at the same time. So you have to go with that. I mean, your feet don't get to stick and land and anchor like you normally would be able to. So I think the offensive line did fairly well. I'm not going to knock them too bad because I've seen people say they look like trash. That's not the case. They did not look trash. In the run game, they looked solid. In pass protection, they had their reps. But obviously, in these conditions, defensive line better win.
Yeah. Conditions obviously were a part. I didn't think they looked that great. I think you're a little more optimistic probably than I was. I didn't think they looked that great from the initial test and from what I've seen so far. Like you said, it's surprising. It was the tackles actually that were the problem. Trent Williams looked human for the first time that I've pretty much ever seen him. Really, he looked human.
I've seen that comment multiple times, right? That Trent Williams finally looked human. So the thing is I've said there's been a lot of games where the 49er fan base, and I'm not saying just you in general, because I've seen this a lot on the timeline where people are like, oh, Trent Williams finally had a bad game. Blah, blah, blah. Actually, Trent Williams has had a lot of bad games like this. No, I should not say a lot. He's had a few bad games like this, but they're just so little that no one actually props them to be a big thing because everyone knows that Trent Williams is going to bounce back next week no matter what. I will be 100% shocked if Trent Williams gives up one pressure to the Seattle Seahawks. That's how Trent Williams works. But I would push back on that a little bit because I have seen him in the 49ers uniform have I'll probably say 4 games where he's looked pretty human.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. But what I was saying was, yeah, tackles. I didn't think they looked as good, and especially because those were the players that you expected to play as your top 2 offensive linemen. Spencer Burford had a pretty clean slate. I thought the pass block win rate, like the statistics, I thought they were actually backed up by the film. Sometimes that's not always the case, be it with PFF grades especially. But I actually thought that Spencer Burford had a pretty solid game. Brendel Banks, ups and downs, especially with Banks, but I think that, there are areas to grow, and I think that there were some positives as well. I saw a pancake by Aaron Banks as well. There are some of the highlight plays. I think Banks does have to be a little more refined in pass protection in general, but overall, I think this is a building block, especially with, well, actually, I don't even know if it's going to be better conditions next week because there might be rain again at Levi Stadium this week. But let's get back to your original question. Brandon Ayuk, Devo Samuel, Trey Lance. What were your thoughts on Trey Lance?
I honestly thought Trey Lance played a fairly good game. I thought he played fairly well. So when I'm watching a game, right, we know the conditions. We know, obviously, it's a lot harder to play in the rain, especially when it's downpouring like that, right? First half, I thought Kyle Shanahan called a very, very good game plan. A lot of motions, a lot of misdirections, a lot of crossing routes, a lot of easier throws for Trey Lance, get him comfortable. And then second half comes around, no Elijah Mitchell. He doesn't disguise anything. He's no more motions, right? Mm-hmm. He's not sending Devo Samuel in motion. He's not sending Brandon Ayuk in motion. His tight ends aren't motioning. Then the offense kind of stales, right? It kind of like, hey, Kyle, maybe you want to go back to that motioning that's actually taking eye candy from these linebackers who, instead of having to run, actually having to play the run, they're actually having to look outside first, which is allowing your run game to work. But I thought Trey Lance hit some pretty damn good throws. I thought his best throw of the day was obviously that throw to Ray McCloud, which is a throw top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL make, right? That is a throw Jimmy Garoppolo does not make, does not fit in between over the linebacker and right in front of the safety. That's a throw that you get paid, you get drafted for to make. Now, a throw that he has to hit. And I think right away what I loved about him is right after that game, he came back and said what he did wrong. Like, he knows what he has to fix. That Tyler Kroft throw, you got to put it on him, though. He's wide open. You got to put it on him. You're drafted at 3 overall to make that damn throw. You better put it on him. Like I said, I'm not trying to be too harsh on Trey Lance.
Right.
But That's a throw you 100% have to hit. Now, the other throw that I thought was fairly well because he missed that throw, a similar throw in the preseason was a Brandon Ayuk crossing route where he hit Brandon Ayuk in stride. Brandon Ayuk gets a lot of yards. There was another throw that Jawan Jennings,
Yeah.
beautiful throw, timing throw, nice step in the pocket, let it rip kind of thing. Now, people are going to criticize his interception, right? That interception wasn't a bad decision. It was a bad mistake, right? Because the
Bad
decision was there.
execution. Bad execution. Yeah.
So he was open. Now he's trying to hold that safety, which the safety is able to rob. He's playing that robber role. He's trying to hold that safety a second too late. He lets it rip. You gotta let that ball. And that's one thing I text my buddy. I said, hey, Trey Lance needs to trust his arm a little more. No, he needs to just let that thing rip early. Let it rip. If he lets it rip, he gets it in there. Nice throw, and everyone's like, "Oh my god!" The other throw that I would say that impressed me, like, "Oh, that is a young quarterback who has developed," is the Ross Dwelly. He stepped in the pocket instead of taking off. He let it rip. Trusted his arm. Let it rip to Ross Dwelly in between 2 to 3 defenders. Got the first down. They moved the sticks.
And the good part about that throw, I liked it that it was on the certain side. If he threw it to the other side, Dwelly gets lit up by the charging defender. Instead, Dwelly's back gets hit. He's able to corral the catch first down.
I thought Trey Lance played well. I know someone in the chat, I believe it was 49ers Throwback, asked who played better between Justin Fields and Trey Lance. I'm going to say 100% Trey Lance. I thought Justin Fields looked like shit the entire first half. I really do. He was not getting through his reads, right? He one read and then he wanted to just take off. Like he wasn't getting through reads. He should have had a interception, pick six, the first throw of the game. Samuel Mack wasn't ready for it. Either was the outside corner, I believe it was Emmanuel Mosley. Those two aren't ready for that. Should have been a pick six. Next
the
drive.
Gibson interception drop. Yeah, that was there.
Gibson interception drop, throw it right to Hufanga. Now, where his great stuff came from were two errors from the 49ers that I do not think will happen again. We got to remember, Talanoa Hufanga is working with a player he hasn't worked with much in Gibson, right? Mm-hmm. So that error where he busted from where he was supposed to be on Dante Pettis and comes down and busts, I don't see that happening with the proper communication of a guy like George Odom, which I'm surprised George Odom wasn't playing, and it was more so Gibson. So you don't see that. You're not going to see that kind of coverage being busted with more communication and stuff like that. So that'll get cleaned up. And then the other one was, I believe it was Dre Greenlaw who was in coverage on the on St. Brown. Didn't follow. Now that has to be Hufanga who rotates and takes that away. Hufanga is not, and everyone knows this, so I don't get why people criticize him for this. He is not a deep third safety. I don't care what anyone says. We've all said he is not a deep third safety where you're going to expect him to be that eraser in this defense. He is a guy who you want along the line of scrimmage. You want in that middle of the field, roaming around, doing his thing. So I don't criticize Hufanga for that, but I thought Justin Fields capitalized on a lot of penalties, his running game, and hitting the wide open guys. Because if he misses those throws, they lose. He hit those throws. He saw the wide open guy. Kudos to him. He finally started reading the defense and actually saw those throws, which he probably wouldn't have hit in the first half. So kudos to him.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. If you talk about being outplayed, I don't know if you can make the argument that Justin Fields outplayed Trey Lance, but two things I'll say. One, Trey Lance was expected to outplay Justin Fields based on his supporting cast. You have Trent Williams, you have Devo Samuel, you have Brandon Ayuk, you have Kyle Juszczyk. Even without George Kittle, it's miles better than what Chicago has, both on the offensive line and with their weapons. And second, I did think that Justin Fields outplayed Trey Lance in one way, and that was with his legs. I thought Justin Fields, the way that he maneuvered the pocket in the second half with his legs, I thought that was an area where Justin Fields did outplay Trey Lance. But can you really take much out of that? I don't know. Justin Fields was able to create plays with his legs, extend plays, which then led to those busted coverages, and he made open throws.
But even then, Rohan, I don't think So coming out of college, Trey Lance was never this scramble style of quarterback that Justin Fields is, or like guys like that, right? Like
Right.
he's never been where he's going to scramble around and then after the play, he's just going to start breaking people down and getting yards. He's always been a design run kind of quarterback, or picking up 5 to 6 yards on these scrambles. That's not his game. He's more so looking to throw the ball down the field in terms of when he starts to scramble, he's looking for his next receiver that's going to get open to let it rip. Justin Fields isn't. Justin Fields is looking to run when he wants to run. And I think that's the difference between a quarterback who wants to throw the ball but is mobile versus a quarterback that is a running quarterback, right? Like he's able to run and he's just going to take off because he knows that's his best ability in terms of letting it rip post snap, right? So, like, I think that's kind of what I saw from Trey Lance and Justin Fields. So I don't want to make it sound like Trey Lance isn't a. I don't want to make it sound like Trey Lance isn't a runner because he's not, right? Like he's really not. If we watched what he did in college, we watched what he's done throughout the NFL outside of the Arizona Cardinals game. He's not a runner. So I see a lot of fans like, oh, how come Trey didn't use his legs more? Because that's not Trey Lance's game. He's always been, I'm going to scramble. I'm going to look for the next open guy, which it's going to benefit the 49ers in dry environment. So I think people should be excited about that.
Right. And that's also why I said I don't know how much you can take away from it because it's not the main element, right, of a quarterback.
Yeah.
It's only the added bonus of a quarterback. But yeah, good analysis there on Trey Lance. Now talking about Brandon Ayuk or Devo Samuel, which one do you want to start with?
Whoever you want. I'm down to go with whoever. You know my stance on one of them. We talked about a little bit before. So whoever you want to go with.
All right, so let's go with the one that I do know, and then we'll make the last one a surprise. Let's start with Devo Samuel. What did you think about him in this game?
He lost a damn game for the team. You got paid, bro. You got paid to be the top dude on the team, right?
And then you come. I understand that, and this is where I'm going to back away because the weather elements, it dictates the game, right? It obviously does. But he was holding that rock so damn loose. That is not an element. That is not the reason for the fumble, right? He was holding the ball so loose, knowing he was going to get hit, and that's why he fumbled. It was an easy punch out. Like, it wasn't – he didn't punch the ball hard. He barely punched the ball. That should not have happened, even in the conditions that they had. I thought he definitely fumbled the game away, even though it's early. People could say, oh, it's early. I don't care. It was 10-, at the time when it was 3-0 when he fumbled, 7-0 when he fumbled. Doesn't matter when he fumbled, right? 49ers would have had more points. And in any kind of game like this, 17 points is the goal, right? That's the target goal for any team in a mud fest, whatever you want to call it, a slugfest, call it a kind of game. If you get 17, you're like 95% sure to win in this kind of environment. So I thought that fumble was very crucial because the 49ers had to put together a pretty damn that Trey Lance started actually looking pretty damn comfortable. He hit Brandon Ayuk on a crossing route, I believe. That was the drive. I was like, okay, they put some stuff together. Capitalize on this drive, score a touchdown. Instead, your best offensive player fumbles the ball. Dude, you were paid to not fumble the ball, right? So,
right.
We could say weather, but the way he was holding it tells me the weather did not play a factor in that fumble. I don't know what you saw, but I do not see the weather playing a factor in that fumble.
I don't think it played a factor, and it necessarily like you said, right? It did cost them points. They were at the 16-yard line of Chicago, but it's early in the game. Can you really say that dictates anything? I'm not sure, but the momentum certainly switched because the 49ers were such a good red zone team a year ago. That's why they had confidence in their offense a lot. You saw the statistic. They completed 67% of their offensive drives last year in the red zone for touchdowns. You had the perfect, chance to start it off like that this year. You're at your 16-yard line. Your young quarterback has moved you all the way down the field on a 5-play, 45-yard drive, and that was involving even one penalty on that drive. It was right after that nice Brandon Ayuk pass, that crosser route that you talked about earlier. And then you fumble it. Now, Devo Samuel did get a rushing touchdown a little later. That was a good sign. But the fumble was a huge thing because, it cost you points in the red zone, a place where you're supposed to score almost every time that you come out of it.
Especially when it's a situation where it's your first drive of the game, right? It's the scripted part of the game. And this was at the moment when it was the least rainy, right? It wasn't pouring down yet. It was sprinkling. It was kind of a little bit better conditions at the time. You fumble it at the 12-yard line. You give it away. Luckily, the 49ers get an interception. 49ers go 4 plays and out. So, like, they were 3 and out because I believe it was an eligible man downfield, pushed them back. So it ended up being 4 plays of actual game. And then another 3 and out. And then a 7-play touchdown. Like, it would have been 14-0. Like, at that moment. So at half, it would have been 14-0. Instead, it was 7-0. So that is a big, big, big factor in the game. And it's something that the 49er fans on Twitter, 49er fans on other social media platforms have not talked about. Even if you come away with 3 points on that drive, it's 10-0 at halftime. So when you score, the next time you score is a bigger moment because now it would be 13-0, and the defense is actually getting to tee off on that defensive line instead of allowing them to actually run the ball because they started running the ball with Khalil Herbert in the second half. I don't know, people forget about that. They started running the ball with Khalil Herbert in the second half.
And he was doing well, yeah. But really, real quick, if we're talking about it, you talk about it should have been 14-0. Well, it should have been 21-0 if we're talking about realistically.
Realistically, because that touchdown, that
because the Lance missed touchdown, that was – so now we're talking about not one, but two. No, 3 opportunities overall where you had scores and you only come away with 1. 2 missed opportunities. That's a big thing.
I absolutely agree. Like, but the thing is, though, is the first drive of the game, to me, if you punch that in, you're walking all over this team, right? You literally just march down the field. No problem, right? No problem. And then next thing you know, it's actually 0-0. Teams can't move the ball. Now the weather starts to rain harder. I think Devo should not have fumbled the ball. But weather conditions, so I'm going to put a little bit of blame on the rain for Devo's fumble. However, when Devo got the ball the second time in the red zone, he made sure he didn't fumble and actually lowered his shoulders like he should have the first time, but he didn't. So I don't know if the weather played a factor in that one too, because the first time he didn't lower his shoulders, kind of was running with the ball loose. Second time, tucked the ball, ran someone over to get into the end zone. I don't know. But Devo should have. I don't know. But that was to me, I think that's a bigger factor in the game than Trey Lance's interception. Then obviously, I think the Tyler Kroft missed touchdown was a very, very big factor, but bigger than what people were making Trey Lance's interception out of, to be honest.
And I think when you talk about the overall part of it, right? Like the 49ers, they were only up 7-0. They go up 10-0 at the half. But like Devo Samuel, not only did he have those mistakes, we talked about it earlier, he had 2 drops as well in the game. And one of them, I understand. Rainy, that was the part that he was talking about. Tough part of the game. But Devo Samuel, 2 drops as well. That's a big thing. And so, like, overall, it was an inconsistent performance by Devo Samuel to start this game.
I agree. And it's not something you expect from a guy who just got paid. But when you're not there in camp, you're not there and stuff like that, you supposedly come in to camp out of shape. Supposedly, that's what the people were saying. The criticism is going to find you, right? Criticism is going to find you if you're coming in out of shape and stuff like that. So, going back to Brandon Ayuk, I do know you asked about him too, so we'll get to him real quick. I honestly think Brandon Ayuk needs to be featured more in the 49ers pass game. The 49ers used Devo to run the ball right after Elijah Mitchell went down. He ran the ball 8 times, 52 yards. So they were doing pretty good when they were having Devo run the ball. But there's no reason that Brandon Ayuk gets 2 targets. He gets 40 yards on 2 targets. What the hell are we doing? Why are we not?
Yeah, no, it was because one of them happened late in the game too. I tweeted this out. Like Brandon Ayuk had like 1 target midway through the game, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Trey Lance throws 28 times, and Brandon Ayuk can only see the ball twice. That's very interesting, given like obviously the dynamic. Like if I'm Kyle Shanahan, I'm telling Trey Lance, look for Brandon Ayuk a lot more in general because you have that connection. Get yourself acclimated, get yourself comfortable, especially with these conditions. Look for Brandon Ayuk. And I understand one was taken back because of a penalty, so maybe 3 targets, but I want to see double that. I want to see 6 targets, maybe even close to double-digit targets a game.
I agree. There's no reason why, in my opinion, Jawan Jennings is getting 6 targets and Brandon Ayuk is getting 2. I like Jawan Jennings, but that route that Jawan Jennings ran is a touchdown if it is Brandon Ayuk. I don't get so that's what I don't get in terms of what Kyle was doing in the second half because I thought the first half he called a hell of a game. He had
Yeah,
Brandon Ayuk on a crossing route, 31 yards. He had a nice play to Devo, I believe, for a big rush in the first half, and then stuff started going away. And I think it happens to do with not utilizing the motion, not utilizing stuff like that. Um, I thought Kyle used Ray McLeod very nicely on a crossing route. That's a very
yeah.
good way to use him. It's just
Like overall,
what you
yeah. I mean,
go ahead, go
overall,
ahead.
right? There were different parts of the game where you're like, Kyle Shanahan's in his bag. But like maybe it's because we saw those elements where like in the rest of the game we're like a little more disappointed from Kyle Shanahan. But in a way, you expect Kyle Shanahan to be consistent throughout the game. I saw
Yeah,
Grant
like
Cohn say this real quick. I saw Grant Cohn say this. If something's working, why not utilize it again?
facts, facts.
That was the truest statement I saw. If something's working, if they can't find the adjustment, why not utilize it again? Force them to make that adjustment and then go to something else because they made that adjustment for that certain play.
And what's weird is Kyle Shanahan has said that in press conferences. He like so one time they asked, "Oh, how come you ran the ball so many times?" He was like, "Why am I going to go away from something when I'm averaging 4.5 yards a carry?" He was like, "If that's working, I'm going to continue to do it until they stop it. Because the moment they stop it is the moment I change up." And I thought because he was using a lot of motion. It was working. It was the linebackers from the Bears were everywhere. They were out of sorts. You see what Kyle Shanahan did with Trey Lance, connecting on 2 crossing routes, connecting on a deep vertical route. Um, and then he goes away from stuff like that. It's like, come on, Kyle, like stick to what you were doing. It's working. I get you're not getting points out of it, but you're moving the ball pretty damn well. Um, it just doesn't make sense to me why Kyle went away from it. And I did want to criticize Kyle Shanahan a little bit because he did go away, and you can't go away from stuff like that. You have to stick to how's it going, David? You have to stick to what's going on. So I think Kyle Shanahan deserves criticism as well. But I want to hear what you thought from Debo and Brandon Ayuk real quick.
Yeah, so Devo Samuel, up and down performance. You saw the running game. I liked what I saw in the running game, apart from the fumble from Devo Samuel. He ran it well, and this even though he had red zone carries, he still averaged 6.5 yards a carry on 8 carries in this game. That's pretty damn good. It's up to his 2021 numbers, and you're like, okay, people are not going to expect Devo Samuel to run the football a lot more. Are they going to prepare for it? Is that yards per carry going to go down? Didn't go down in game 1. 8 carries, 52 yards. That is a pretty good stat line for Devo Samuel, especially when he was relied a little more when Elijah Mitchell went out, right? Because you had Jeff Wilson Jr. and Devo Samuel pretty much as your 2 rushers alongside Trey Lance. But like we said, fumble, 2 drops, those things cannot be happening. And the one disappointing thing, I'm not going to say that it all was on Devo Samuel because it wasn't, but only 2 receptions on 8 targets. That relationship there kind of has to grow. You want to see a little more efficiency when Trey Lance is targeting Devo Samuel on whatever kind of routes. 2 receptions. You want, like, the targets are good, but you want the receptions to increase for that. Devo Samuel, I'd say an up and down game. Brandon Ayuk, good game in the way that he was used. I like that he had a jet sweep early in the game. That's not something we saw much of in 2020. I'm sorry, in 2021. We saw that, though, in his rookie year when he was utilizing creative ways. I like that because it reminded me of 2020. I was a little disappointed that we didn't go to that again. I wanted to see maybe 2 or 3 more jet sweeps. Maybe not 3 more, but like 1 to 2 more jet sweeps from Brandon Ayuk. It was reminiscent of those 2020 days. And receiving wise, I thought he was fine. You know, he caught pretty much all 3 passes that went his way. 1 was negated for penalty. So he's efficient. He's doing well with his routes. And I just want to see him get targeted more. So yeah, it was kind of 2 different storylines with the 2 receivers. But again, conditions are there. I expect a better bounce back in week 2.
So you said the Devo Samuel Trey Lance connection, that is because of the 49ers front office inability to get a contract done early and having Devo Samuel miss a lot of OTAs, a lot of training camp. That is the fault of John Lynch and whoever the hell is negotiating contracts. Just so everyone's clear, because you're going to see that the first 2 to 3 weeks of the season, a Devo Samuel and Trey Lance connection not being there fully. Going to the coaching staff, bro. Well, first let's go to the defensive run game. So defense only held the Bears to 2.7 yards per carry. The 49ers ran the ball for I think it was 4.8, I believe. Can't remember off the top of my head.
It was 4.8. Yeah.
So talk about the run game. Like obviously the fact that 49ers outplayed the Bears in the run game, and they outdid everything statistically. How do you lose a game like this when you have 331 total yards and you only give up 200 yards? Like it's ridiculous, man.
And I think it's right here with what 49er Throwback is saying here. Turnovers and penalties. Penalties were the big thing. The 49ers, I think, had above 60 to 70 yards more in penalties. If we look exactly, they had 99 yards worth of penalties. The Bears only had 24. 12 penalties to 3 penalties. That was the big killer on both sides of the football for the 49ers. And that's the reason that the Bears were able to move the ball despite having such putrid offensive stats in general. And so to me, I blame it pretty much on penalties. I think that was kind of a big thing that you said it. I mean, that's a big thing that kind of like shifted the momentum of this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when so there's this thing where you're getting first down from penalties, right? The 49ers gave the Chicago Bears 5 first downs on penalties. They had 15 total first downs. Take away 5 of those, they only have 10 first downs the entire game. The entire game. The Chicago Bears were 5 for 14.
That's crazy.
5 for 14 on third down. Like, they were literally around. So 5 for 15 is 33% efficiency. I'm pretty decent with math. So 5 for 14 was about 37, almost 40% roughly. I'm not that great at math, but you don't win games like that. Like, literally, the 49ers extended key drives by the Chicago Bears. They literally handed them the keys to continue the drive. And shout out to the Bears. They capitalized on what they had to do. They took advantage of the opportunities that the 49ers gave them. But you can't have 100 and something yards, 100 total yards, 99 yards in penalties. Every 100 yards for fans that don't understand, for every 100 yards, you give up 7 points. It's pretty clear. Every 100 yards, you give up 7 points. So I also want to talk about real quick. There's a stat. Because I had a Jimmy Garoppolo fan message me talking mad shit, right? Mad shit. Jimmy Garoppolo's offense was better, blah, 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 blah. All right, first of all, we're in rain conditions, so shut the hell up. That's what I told him. Shut the hell up. We're in rain conditions, right? Jimmy Garoppolo in rainy conditions didn't do well either. So in week 1, with Trey Lance, the 49ers averaged 4.8 yards per carry, and Trey Lance and that offense converted 47% of their third downs. In 2021, Jimmy Garoppolo's offense that he led averaged 4.3 yards per carry and only converted 40% of their third downs. If the 49ers can continue this, they will be a much better offense than they were last year because of the run game, and the average ability goes up. What do you think about that? Because a lot of fans are saying, oh, Jimmy Garoppolo would have won this game. Jimmy Garoppolo wins this game. Easy. What do you think about that, Rohan?
I mean, like, I really don't think that that's true necessarily, because like you said, we've seen how they've played in conditions with Garoppolo before, and it's not a slight to Garoppolo. I mean, it's just weather conditions that change the ultimate outcome of the game. We've seen the 2 outcomes, right? I mean, 49er fans are very reminiscent of last year when the Colts won 30-18 at Levi Stadium following a bye, with Garoppolo throwing 2 interceptions, including that one dud ball where it slipped right off his hands. Remember,
He did
right
what?
into a safety. He threw 2 dud balls, and I mean the second one wasn't his fault necessarily because it slips out of his hands like that. But
Say that
threw
again.
2
One more time.
interceptions. Threw 2 interceptions.
in the rain when I have a lot of fans messaging me about Jimmy Garoppolo winning this damn game. Yeah, like at the end of the day, guys, I try not to be critical when it comes to rainy games like this because the environments do play a factor in the outcome of the game. But honestly, I really do believe the outcome of the game was dictated by penalties from the defense and the two blown coverages by that defense. And the more you're on the field, you're going to give these good NFL players opportunities to capitalize, and they finally did so. Rohan, the weather might is 60% chance to rain in Santa Clara. Like, what are the odds of it raining like that in Santa Clara? The only day we've had a heat wave for the past couple of weeks, the one day is going to rain. What do you think about that, Rohan?
It's like the gods just saying, Trey Lance, you have another chance to prove yourself in the rain. So you're either going to have another week of the BS that we've seen all week, or you're going to have a game of your life, and everybody's going to be like, wow, Trey Lance can play in the rain. Damn. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting.
Because it's not going to be as bad. Obviously, it
right.
won't be as bad.
It'll be just regular rain as compared to that monsoon of a game, but still, yeah.
So it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun because everyone's going to be overreacting again. But obviously, hopefully, we're able to do a preview of Seattle versus San Francisco, hopefully this week.
Yeah.
But talk to me about the coaching staff, right? What grade would you give Kyle Shanahan and what grade would you give D'Amico Ryans for their involvement of this loss?
I think that when you talk about both, I honestly thought both underwhelmed in a way. And this is because I have high expectations of both coaches. I think both coaches are probably top 10 in their respective fields. Kyle Shanahan being a top 10 head coach and D'Amico Ryans being a top 10 defensive coordinator. I think both are top 10 in their respective fields, but I did think both kind of underwhelmed. And by underwhelmed, I say I'm not giving either of them A grades. I think I'd give Kyle Shanahan around a B to a B minus just because of the lack of consistency that he had throughout this game, because he had a great first half game plan where if the 49ers execute that game plan and capitalize on those mistakes, it's 21-0 like we talked about. But he also faltered in the second half, went away from the staples of his offense and really couldn't get the ball moving the entirety of that second half, which ended up resulting. I'm not going to blame the offense in general on this loss, but I think that, yeah, you score 10 points, you couldn't move the football in the second half. That's a problem. And so for D'Amico Ryans, I think it was a similar story. First half was shut down. I thought he schemed it very well. He put Talanoa Hufanga in the right places. With his personnel,
majority of the game he did.
Yeah. And with his personnel, I thought he was doing pretty good. There are a couple of instances, obviously, where that wasn't the case. The touchdown to I can't say his name, St. Brown over the top. Like we said, you don't necessarily put Hufanga in cover one there. I don't blame as much on D'Amico Ryans as I do on Kyle Shanahan when we're talking about a coaching standpoint, because I thought that Kyle Shanahan could call plays better, where I thought the defense could have executed a little better, hence the penalties in those instances. That really was why they did. So I'd say probably D'Amico, probably a B+, and Kyle Shanahan probably a B- to a B.
So that's pretty fair grades. I give them both roughly a B- B. I give them in the conditions, Kyle Shanahan dialed up enough. He ran the ball for 176 yards, but that's also including 54 yards from Trey Lance. So you ran the ball for 120. Defense played pretty damn well. You only give up 220 yards. That's pretty damn good. So, But he also had the miscommunication. So that's also on D'Amico Ryans at the end of the day. So
yeah,
there was a big conversation coming out of camp. Who would be running back 2, running back 3, and running back 4? Well, running back 1 was already injured. He now officially goes down for the next 8 weeks. Are you worried that Jeff Wilson was only averaging 2.4 yards a carry when Elijah Mitchell was averaging 6.8 yards a carry? Does that mean Jordan Mason and Ty Davis Price need to play over Jeff Wilson? Because if you remember, I said Jeff Wilson was the odd man out and he should not have made this team because of the explosiveness wasn't there. So I want to see. I saw he didn't look explosive. To me, he didn't look explosive. the cold conditions, the rain, and stuff like that probably played a factor in his body. Do you think the 49er fans should be worried about Jeff Wilson being the running back one?
I think there's reason to worry. I initially had your standpoint, and then I wavered off it towards the end of training camp based on what I saw from the 49ers in their utilization of Jeff Wilson, as well as in the preseason. I ended up having Jeff Wilson make the roster and being that RB2 behind Mitchell, but him as the RB1, it's interesting, right? Because to me, I thought Mitchell was the only running back in the system right now, at least that is pro ready enough to run an outside zone type of scheme to hit the outside holes. And I'm not saying he has elite vision or anything like that, but I thought that he was the one who had the requisite amount of speed for him to be able to do that. And I'm not talking acceleration, I'm just talking pure speed. Jeff Wilson Jr. now, I think the game plan changes a little bit. I think it kind of translates more to the inside. And yeah, 2.4 yards per carry is not a great, not a great metric at all to start the year, especially because when you see that Elijah Mitchell ran for a good amount of yards per carry. I think it was 6.1 or not 6.1, 6.8. Devo Samuel ran for 6.5. So like those two ran for very efficient numbers, but Jeff Wilson Jr. ran for not as efficient numbers. And I don't think, like looking back, I didn't think that all of Jeff Wilson's runs were his fault necessarily, but I do think that you kind of got to sprinkle in everybody now, get a variety of different type of running backs so that it's not as predictable anymore, because I think the talent at running back has decreased.
Do you think, I agree with everything you said right there. Absolutely. Do you think Marlon Mack starts getting reps?
Oh.
Because look, the 49ers offense needs, so the reason why they brought in the bigger bodied guys is because they wanted to put that speed element from Elijah Mitchell. Elijah Mitchell's fast. He's explosive, right? They wanted to put that speed element with the big body power kind of guy. Do you bring Mack to be your speed guy, or do you allow Jordan Mason and TDP to start carrying the load? Because I don't think Jeff Wilson is the guy. I really don't. He's always been a guy who's going to fill in and he could have a good game here and there, but he is not a guy that can carry the load. So I think the 49ers should either rely on the young players, which have more burst, or bring up Marlon Mack.
And I think if you bring up Marlon Mack, that's a clear sign of confidence in him, because Marlon Mack hasn't played special teams since his rookie year when he barely played special teams. So one thing we talk about, Kyle Shanahan elevated Jordan Mason over TDP, he said this past week, primarily because Mason could play special teams where TDP necessarily wasn't at that range yet. And obviously being the third running back on the depth chart, that's important. If Mack, though, is elevated, that shows two things to me. One, it's not necessarily a bad thing, although you can view it like that. Kyle Shanahan doesn't have the supreme confidence in one of those two young running backs, probably TDP, to produce at a high level yet, to where he needs to bring in a guy off the street like Marlon Mack. Because if Marlon Mack's getting activated, he's going to play, like I said, because you're not going to activate a guy if he doesn't provide value on special teams, if you don't plan it to have it as a part of the game plan. He has the breakaway speed, so he can, in a way, fill a part of the Elijah Mitchell role. But Marlon Mack's an intriguing guy. I mean, I like the fit, and I wouldn't be surprised if he got elevated to play this week.
So what's crazy is Marlon Mack. So I was really paying attention to the Houston Texans preseason this year because of Dameon Pierce, Davis Mills, and they have a couple good guys, right? They have a couple of solid players on their roster, in my opinion. So I was paying attention to the preseason.
Yeah.
Marlon Mack started picking up. His explosiveness started coming back towards the end of the
Right.
preseason.
He's only 26, bro. He's only 26. That's crazy.
So if they could get Marlon Mack to be at least a bit of what he was, and you don't need everything that he was when he was with the Colts, right? Because when he was with the Colts, he was a solid running back. A lot of people forget that Marlon Mack is a solid running back. Now, the only thing is Marlon Mack obviously has that injury concerns, but in 2019, he was a 1,000-yard rusher. The year in 2018, he was a 900-yard rusher. And then injuries started hitting him in 2020 and 2021. So the last 2 years, he's been injured. He's been a guy who tore his Achilles, been out for a couple seasons pretty much. But if he could get that explosiveness back in Kyle Shanahan's offense, Kyle's going to scheme up open holes. Like, everyone always talks about Kyle Shanahan's scheme and how Elijah Mitchell or other guys are just walk in and they take reps and go bananas. But it's because there's holes. And I think all Marlon Mack needs is these holes the opportunity. But I think the top 2 running backs down the stretch of the season with Elijah Mitchell going to be out, I think it's going to be Jordan Mason and TDP with Marlon Mack sprinkled in there. I think Kyle Shanahan's going to go away from Jeff Wilson Jr. because of he needed Jeff Wilson to step up big time week 1, and he didn't answer the call, right? And Kyle Shanahan's one of those guys where if he calls on your number and you don't respond, he goes to the next guy in line, and then I think it's going to start going to the next guy in line. So this is Jeff Wilson's opportunity this week against Seattle, and if he doesn't do much against Seattle, Kyle Shanahan's going to start going to the next guy.
Yeah, I mean, Jan Stewart here says Marlon Mack will shine in this game, while also asking the question: Seattle beat Denver, a way better team than Chicago. Does that worry you about Niners versus Seahawks? What do you think?
No, because the reason why. So it's actually funny because I thought the Seahawks would put up a good fight against Denver only because of the return of Russell Wilson. So everyone always forgets when you have a little chip on your shoulder, you're going to play better, you're going to do better. And the media was making it a Russell Wilson return where he's going to slaughter the Seattle Seahawks. Well, they forgot that Pete Carroll and that organization know Russell Wilson best. Like they know him better than anyone. They came in and did exactly what they wanted. They ran the ball well. They threw the ball well, played solid defense, didn't make mistakes. But Denver did exactly the opposite. They made mistake after mistake after mistake, fumbled the ball 2 times inside the 1. They were very undisciplined on defense. And then in the fourth quarter, wasted a minute, went for it. Instead of going for it on 4th and 5, kick a 69-yard field goal. Maybe it was like a 100-yard field goal at the end of the day. I forgot how far it was because that was just a stupid mistake. But it was so a lot of things play into factor. I think Seattle isn't that good. And we'll talk more about this on the next episode when Rohan and I break down that preview game. But to give you guys an example, if you guys follow me on Twitter, you guys saw what I was tweeting yesterday. I think it's going to be an easy win for the 49ers this week. I really do. I don't think Seattle has much to put fear in any of the 49ers players or even the fans' eyes. Don't be afraid of the Seattle Seahawks because literally Denver did everything in their power to lose that game.
Yeah, it in a way, it was similar to the 49ers kind of standpoint, right? Where both teams against relatively inferior opponents kind of gave away the game themselves. It was like they beat themselves rather than beating their opponents because of the penalties, because of the turnovers, because of the mistakes that they made themselves, despite outgaining their opponents in yards and things like that.
No, I agree. So if we were to actually break that game down last night, which is going off of the actual podcast, the 49ers being centric. So if we were to actually break that game down, Russ threw for 340. They ran the ball for 103. They had 440 yards total. Their defense didn't give up. The Broncos defense didn't give up much yards, and this is going way out of. But it's a good stuff. So
Denver outgained it by 180 yards.
Yeah, and then if we look at the actual first down from penalties, Seattle had seven first down from penalties. They had 19 total first downs in that entire game. Their third down efficiency was pretty good, 6 for 11, but they were getting first downs on second down, first down. They were getting 15-yard penalties because of stupid mistakes. End of the day, I think the 49ers handle this game fairly well. I see no fear. I have no fear. Seattle's not good. They're not.
I agree. I think, it's interesting. The line right now is, I think, San Francisco -10. That is high. That is
take it.
Very high.
And I would take it. I think we beat Seattle by 13 points. Absolutely. I don't know you, Andrew, but I would take that bet with you any day of the week because I don't think Seattle is good. I thought they literally lost a game. They won a game that they should have lost because Denver decided to run from the gun at the 1 yard line. Might as well just have Russell Wilson throw a damn interception to a freaking Malcolm Butler at the 1 yard line. That's better than freaking running it out of the gun, to be honest.
Yeah. Carlo here talking about the running back saying Jeff Wilson Jr. has no burst, injury prone. Let the guys play. Would you activate TDP for this game, or would you bring up Marlon Mack?
TDP would 100% be active this game. You drafted him in the 3rd round for a reason. Play your damn player you drafted in the 3rd round. If you don't play him this week, it just shows exactly why you should not be drafting running backs in the 3rd round. I thought the running back they let go would have been a better option than Jeff Wilson. That's just me. Now I'm let's see what he does in Philadelphia, right? So I could be wrong. For all I know, I could be wrong. But if he does well in Philadelphia, Kyle Shanahan used a running back the wrong way and drafted him in the 3rd round. So, hey, I think today we've put together a pretty solid episode recapping Trey Lance, recapping Devo Samuel, Kyle Shanahan, stuff like that. I appreciate everyone for tuning in. Rohan and I have kind of had our schedules go a little crazy because both of us are very busy right now at the time. Rohan is finally in college. Want him to be able to get adjusted to the college life because it is a lot faster in terms of like doing things. Like you have to learn how to manage your time. So
Yeah,
he's a very busy guy. College is serious. He is taking like 90 units from what I've heard. So he decides to do on his free time is take an extra class. I heard he's actually taking like a ballet class, a yoga class, and stuff like that. Just on his free time. You know, let me take 90 units just for fun.
Oh my
Bro,
God.
you never taken a yoga class? All right, I'm Rohan. I'm gonna give you the
I'm
best
taking one
advice.
right now. Just
Are you really?
because he said so.
So
Just
I'm gonna
because
give
he
you the
said
best
so.
advice. So the best advice, you're a single man, right? Take a yoga class, not only for the women that are in that class, but the yoga that you actually do, right? Have you ever done yoga?
No.
Dude, you're gonna do yoga one time and you're gonna have like, how am I sore? Like in the most random spot. Like yoga attacks the body so well. And there's also like you're a single man. There's ladies in there, man. Like, come on. See, it's what you should be doing, man. I know I'm engaged in everything, so I didn't get to take yoga because I was already in a relationship in college and stuff, so I didn't get to take yoga. But a lot of my buddies that were single, they took yoga and they said there was a lot of ladies in there and they loved taking it because it was actually very good a workout for them. I was like, they're actually like kind of like bigger dudes and they struggled like big time.
Yeah. We'll see. Who knows? Maybe I'm a yoga enthusiast in a week when we stream. Who knows? But David said, "You're a smart man."
Hey.
But guys,
Alrighty
thank
then.
you guys so much for tuning in for this episode. Me and Marco greatly appreciate it. Be sure to subscribe to this channel. Go over to 49ers Red Zone as well. All of that. All of us are streaming from both channels, so be sure to subscribe to both. And check us out on Apple Podcasts. We are posting there as well. Greatly appreciate a download. Thank you guys so much. We'll be back later this week with a preview of the Seattle game. And yeah,